Well, hi, my name is Bay Logan, and welcome to the Hong Kong Legends DVD release of Full Contact, aka Hap Do Ko Fei, the knife hero Ko Fei. I'm happy to have with me in the commentary booth today the fist of the North Star himself, a man who's no stranger to full contact in every meaning of the word, Mr. Gary Daniels. How you doing, Gary?
Good, pleasure to be here.
We open up the movie, shot primarily, the opening sequence is on location in Thailand, directed by the great Ringo Lam, and the movie itself released in 1992. Opens up with this great guitar score, which was composed for the film by Teddy Robin Kwan, who is an interesting character, born with a congenital disability, a very small build, a person of very small build, but he became a great musician and had a band back in the 60s called Teddy Robin and the Playboys. And here's our bad guy, Simon Yam, with a quiff, which is the envy of Elvis impersonators across the world. And he seems to be wearing a jacket borrowed from Nicolas Cage, circa Wild at Heart by David Lynch. And he's like doing a little magic trick here. The magic for the movie was actually generated by a gentleman called Alex Yu, who has a magic company in Hong Kong, and he provided all the magic tricks that Simon Yam does in the film. The muscle car pulls up, and at the wheel, the muscle man. We're about to see a couple of really colourful members of Simon's gang. The first is this lady, Bonnie, played by Bonnie Fu, whose character name is Virgin. And honestly, that green skirt gets to see some action in this film. Interesting to see that what they got away with on the streets of Thailand. I think that it's actually easier to film on location in Thailand than it is in Hong Kong. And here's another former Mr. Hong Kong, bodybuilding champion turned actor, super nice man, Frankie Chin. I used to work out at his gym, which is called Power Gym. It's on the corner of Nathan Road and Austin Road in Tsim Sha Tsui. And he's also fans of Story of Ricky and Scorpion King, aka Operation Scorpio. Remember Frankie from his acting performances there. And she's like this girl really takes it out there for a Hong Kong movie. It's unusual to have an actress doing the things that Bonnie Fu is called upon to do in this film. One oddity, occasionally you get lines in English, but all of the Thai characters in the film speak Cantonese, which is like kind of I guess it was a stylish, a kind of a logistical decision made, because the film's primary market at the time the movie was made in 92, Hong Kong films were still playing really to an audience in Hong Kong, so they figured the local audiences would not mind the slight illogic of Thai people speaking Cantonese. I guess it doesn't look as strange as it is distracting for you, Gary, when you see everybody speaking one language and they're not from that country.
Not really. I mean, you can go back to Way of the Dragon with Bruce
Right.
Lee, and I mean, nothing really took away from that movie for me. And no, when I'm watching a Hong Kong movie, I prefer it to be in Cantonese. I
Right.
mean, it's such a great language for action movies.
Strangely, I mean, this is probably my bias, I find it odder when you get Westerners speaking Cantonese, dubbed into Cantonese. But when it's Asian people, you're like, well, maybe they speak Cantonese, it makes sense. In Way of the Dragon, of course, there's one line in Italian is Mamma Mia in the whole film, which is kind of odd.
Which is probably the most English-Italian phrase ever used.
Totally. Frankie, I remember, did a whole series of TV commercials with Jackie Chan for a drink called Striker, and it was kind of showing how, you have big power, but you also can have like kind of athletic or gymnastic power, and I guess it was if you drink Striker, then you'll be athletic like Jackie. Chinese people, and I mean, I've got to be careful saying this next to Gary, who's, one of the better built men on the planet, but they have this thing about muscular people. There's a saying, "Se ji fat dat tolo gandan." It means like the four limbs get big and the head stays simple. And this is really personified by this character that we see played here, Dino, or Dino. It's written Dino like the Beano in the subtitles, but it's Dino like dinosaur. And here's, the Rambo shot. Rambo, of course, Rambo 2 was shot on location in Thailand. Here we have the opening of Rambo 3. So the Rambo shot with the big, what kind of gun, is that
That's an M16
Thank you.
With a 203 grenade launcher.
And here's the Flashdance opening. And as you were mentioning, our leading lady, Anne Bridgewater, has an uncommon resemblance to
the lady from Flashdance.
Jennifer Beals.
Jennifer Beals.
Absolutely, doing this routine here. And she's actually dancing to the song Get Your Funk Out, which was, one of the people who recorded it was Extreme. Get the funk out, I'm sorry. And it's really funny, because every time we have music used in films, people always say to me, I asked them, did we, did you get the rights? And they're like, well, we pay a contribution to I think it's, there's an organization that actually collects money on behalf of song owners. So anyway, maybe they do and maybe they don't. But anyway, that's the track being played here. There's another interesting story about the music that I will mention a bit later. double there for the acrobatic stuff being performed by Anne. Anne Bridgewater, you fans of the movies Inspector Wears Skirts 1 and 2, aka Top Squad 1 and 2, will remember her. She's Eurasian, as the name suggests. Her father's English and her mom is Chinese. And she was in both those, with Lau Gao-wing getting his credit as action director. Very unusual work from Lau Gao-wing, who's known as a kung fu movie maker from the old Shaw Brothers era, and has done a few modern day films, but never a kind of gangster epic like this one. And this, again, is quite out there for a Hong Kong film. Actresses are not normally called upon to do this kind of thing in a Hong Kong movie. There's our leading character, played by the wonderful Chow Yun-fat. Jeff, played by Chow Yun-fat, playing with his balisong, his butterfly knife. All of this was cut from the initial video release of the film in England and some other territories as well, because the balisong was like frowned upon. And it's like hard to imagine now, because I think things have loosened up quite a bit, but quite a lot was cut from this film when it was first released. Violence was cut from the Hong Kong theatrical print, and all shots of the balisong were cut from the UK video release. I don't think it ever got a theatrical release in England. The other guy in there with Chow Yun-fat is Chris Lee, who is a stuntman, gets an acting role in the movie, but later you can get to see why they cast him, because he does a lot of physical stuff, some pretty rough stunts in the film. But he's got a great look. I mean, he's somebody who has acted and also directed, former member of the Jackie Chan stunt team, and his Chinese name is Lei Kin-sang, and he's Chris Lee. He was the action director of the film Twin Dragons, which was a Jackie Chan picture from a few years ago. And you have this interesting look they've given Chow Yun-fat. Ringo Lam said he wanted Chow to be in better shape than he is now. He'd actually hired a trainer to try to get Chow all pumped up so that he'd be convincing as like a bouncer. And he says, you know, his mistake was he hired the guy to go and train Chow Yun-fat. What he should have done is gone over there with the guy to train alongside Chow Yun-fat, because he didn't think that Chow Yun-fat had a look. Actually, Chow riding the motorbike. And this is, I looked at this, I thought, how many times in an American movie do they allow the actor to ride a motorbike?
Well, they'll allow you to ride the bike, but usually when it's a close-up, the bike will be on a trailer.
Right.
Or if you have to be riding and shooting or riding and doing anything else, the bike itself will be on a trailer, and you will never actually see the wheels on the ground while the lead actor is doing the stuff.
No. Absolutely. So here we have the guy with his head stuck in the window. There is Anthony Wong, Wong Chao-san, you know, arguably the greatest screen actor of our generation of actors working in Hong Kong. Really gifted. And this was one of the early... He did this movie and Hard-Boiled in the same year, Hard-Boiled for John Woo. So this is the year he really came out to show his stuff. And here we have this really cool action sequence, the first time we get to see Chow. Chow himself, of course, not a trained martial artist per se, but he'd been through the Shaw Brothers TVB training program, so he absolutely, you know, had that physical training in film fight choreography. This film, I think, is the film where he looks the most powerful.
It's funny to me that you mentioned that they put him with a trainer to try and look more like a bouncer. But he's such a talented actor. He does it in his acting anyway.
Right.
I mean, he's not buffed, he's not big built, but you still feel this guy knows how to handle himself because he's such a good actor.
Because he carries it off, absolutely. And I've always felt that with actors, that sometimes you can have somebody who's not a gifted martial artist, and they're being doubled. But if they've got the physicality to carry it off, then it's believable.
Well, it shows that acting is the key. I mean, there's a lot of martial artists who want to get into the business because they've got the martial arts ability, but they don't have the acting and the charisma. So it just goes to show it's really about the acting.
Sure. And I think this is a very different style of action than what we're used to from Lau Gao-wing, who's the brother of Lau Ga-leung, arguably the greatest martial arts director in the history of Shaw Brothers. And you get this... he's assisted by Ridley Choi Boa, who was an action director also on Skinny Tiger, Fatty Dragon, another Hong Kong Legends release. And they're really kind of trying to go for a little of the stylized, find a middle ground between the stylized action that we're used to from the kind of Shaw Brothers era, the Hong Kong style of fighting, and also a more street real kind of gritty look to it, because obviously this is a street fight and he's fighting these gangster guys. There's a saying in Chinese martial arts about 1 inch longer, 1 inch stronger. So this kind of goes against that principle here, because he's twirling the balisong and using it like to distract them. It's beautifully framed the way they use the weapon. But the other guys, they're Thai style, these Krabi Krabong swords they're holding a lot longer. So technically in Chinese martial arts terms, they seem to be... That's a real Shaw Brothers shot. The rain falling on the blade. That's so cool. That's something got from those back in the good old days. We've seen so much of this stuff, it's like tricky to figure out how to make it look different. But I think they did a really good job, and of course a lot of this cut in the original video release and in some territories around the world where they're really touchy about showing bladed combat, particularly with the balisong, because it's such a charismatic weapon. It's kind of faded away a bit, but I remember when it first came out, everybody was crazy about the balisong. I think I had one of the first ones in England. You sit there chopping my fingers to bits with it.
You know what I find interesting about this scene
Sure.
is Simon Yam is stuck with his head.
Anthony Wong.
Sorry, Anthony Wong is stuck with his head in the window.
Yeah.
So but obviously he didn't want to be there for the whole scene, so they've shot nearly all of this scene without having to see Anthony Wong in the background.
Right.
Otherwise, he would have had to be there the whole time, and you can see the choice of shots.
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
see him, otherwise he would have had
Right.
to be stuck
Otherwise,
there
it'd be
the whole time.
or his butt double
Yeah.
would be there. Have you ever had a butt double, Gary?
No,
Anyway, meanwhile, back at the ranch. But I think Chow, as you mentioned quite rightly, Chow is such a good actor. He didn't need to be body built. He didn't need too many. I mean, they gave him a different hairstyle for this movie, but he didn't need lots of like props to carry off being this tough character, because he's such a good actor. Every time I see a guy shove his gun into his pants in that way, I always think, like, bad idea. You're going to shoot your...
It's just a way of getting the gun out of the shot.
Do you know what? I think we can say shoot your dick off. Because look what else is in this movie. People aren't going to be horrified by it. Anne Bridgewater, lovely girl, never really got a shot at being a major player in Hong Kong. I don't know whether it's the bias about Eurasians, whatever. She was in Inspector Wears Skirts, Ba Wong Fire 1 and 2, and she was in like 2 films that kind of copied Inspector Wears Skirts, which are called Pink Squad, and they were like kind of, there's 1 and 2 of those as well, all shot within the same year. And this movie is the only film where you really get to see her show some range. There's Anthony, kind of got the old Steven Seagal hairstyle happening in this movie, doesn't he? Fantastic actor, incredible range. Whether he's playing some lunatic killer or this kind of, there's a beautiful shot.
In fact, in this movie, I think it's Anthony Wong that has the greatest arc. His character has the greatest arc.
I agree. Yeah, really. I mean, he really goes through the mill. I mean, he's just a wonderful supporting actor. I mean, he subscribes to that old school of like, it's like, don't just do something, stand there. He can just be in a shot, and so much going on without there seeming to be anything going on. Lots of references throughout the early part of the movie, and in fact the later part, to Buddhism and this dichotomy between the very peaceful beliefs of Buddhism and the fact that Thailand is such a Buddhist country, and everybody's wearing these kind of lucky Buddhist necklaces with these Buddhas hanging around them. And at the beginning, Simon Yam is stealing Buddhas, and that's contrasted with the extreme violence that people are perpetrating in and around these Buddhas. And it continues actually once we get into Hong Kong. There's actually scenes where they're juxtaposing these very strong Buddhist religious icons with this savage violence. So I think probably it's like I know Ringo Lam is somebody who really brings a lot of intelligence and a lot of meaning to his work, but he's looking at different themes, and one theme here was this kind of contradiction between the tenets of people's beliefs and how they're actually acting. I know that's something that you and I have talked about a lot, and it's interesting to see it kind of expressed in a Hong Kong action film, where a lot of the times Hong Kong action movies are really just working on the level of cartoon action and cartoon violence, and like City Hunter. And then
The ultimate cartoon.
The ultimate cartoon. So Anthony Wong, who you were mentioning just now, he's Eurasian, his father is Australian, his mother is Chinese, and his father left home very early, so he's pretty much raised in Wan Chai by his mom. He started working in TV. He had early film roles. He was in a movie at Shaw Brothers called My Name Ain't Susie, and then went on to TV, in smaller roles in movies. Harley Davidson bandana there. It's interesting, Harley Davidson, just a friend of mine works there. They just opened their own branch first opened 2 branches in Hong Kong to sell both the bicycles and also all the Harley Davidson memorabilia. But at the time this movie was made, they didn't have an outlet in Hong Kong, but they did in Thailand. But I guess they got the stuff there.
Is that a fake tattoo?
Yes, it is. I don't think Mrs. Chow would let Chow get a tattoo. In the movie City on Fire, which is the film that really defined Ringo Lam and his working relationship with Chow, he has a love scene in the shower with Carrie and here he is back in the shower with Anne Bridgewater. So I guess whenever he does a movie with Ringo, he puts a note saying, please give me a shower love scene. The love scene in City on Fire is much more
At least it's clean sex.
raunchy. This is clean, yes, right. Good clean sex. Like everybody who goes to Thailand, he's getting good clean sex. But I mean, I guess it's just a little thing that they carried over from City on Fire. And there are lots of things, if you look at, it's not true of all directors, but if you look at the main body of Ringo's real films, from like Cupid 1, which was his first major film, which is a love story, through to the last serious film of his, which is probably, I think it's The Suspect, no, there was one after that, The Victim, through The Victim, which is his main body of work, before he went off to do films for Jean-Claude Van Damme and do other stuff. You see these themes and ideas running through from film to film, and it's interesting that body of work. Have you seen his On Fire trilogy?
Yes, I saw
They're
the
all
first one.
Yeah, well, City on Fire was great. Then there was like City on Fire, Prison on Fire. I think I got them in the right order. City on Fire, Prison on Fire, and then School on Fire. And School on Fire was very controversial. So then after that, he said, "Time to put the fire out." I don't know whether we're going to get him on the disc. He's very shy about doing on cameras. I can never remember Ringo doing an interview on camera, and it's such a shame because he's so interesting. Every movie of his reflects some aspect of his life. Like he did a movie called Burning Paradise, which is all about the fear of growing old. This movie is about brotherhood and the pressures that can be put on the relationship between two guys. Basically, it's two-hander, isn't it? Chow Yun-fat and Anthony Wong's character.
But all the characters in this movie are so well developed,
Yep.
which is very unusual in a Hong Kong movie. It often
Right.
focuses on the main good guy and the main bad guy, whereas in this movie, all the smaller characters, all the surrounding characters are all very well. They're very deep and very well acted. It's a great ensemble cast, which
Totally.
is very unusual, especially because we're used to kung fu movies, where
Right.
it does focus on the fighting and the main two characters.
Yeah. I mean, that thing about Ringo is I think he looks at the film as a tapestry that he needs to paint in. I mean, and I have to say, in recent years, to my mind, his work has not been to the standard of his earlier. I'm sure we say that about many, many directors. But in the time he's making these movies, he really was at the top of his game. And, every aspect of this tapestry, he was painting it in as best he can. Again, lots of really cool shots of Chow riding a motorbike. And actually, if you know him in real life, he's such a homebody. You wouldn't think he was a biker. Now, this is kind of like, this would be shocking to Thai people because they treat the Thai boxing arenas as a kind of like a temple. And actually, for a long time, women were not even allowed into the two Lumpini and Rajadamnern, which are the two major stadiums in Bangkok. Women were not allowed in. And even to Thai boxing camps, it was kind of frowned on. I mean, they have a little kind of sideline into kind of kinky female Thai boxing, but generally not. So this is kind of really outrageous. But I guess they paid money to hire the place, and that's a really funky shot, having the upside down one. So that's establishing the fact that Simon Yam's character is Judge is gay, and a lot of things now, of course, probably seem relatively commonplace. But at the time, having a gay character, a nymphomaniac character, was unusual. Now you see why they hired Chris, because you can really throw him around like nobody's business. He's actually a gifted director. He directed a movie. Chris, the smaller guy here, Chris Lee directed a film called Queen's High, which starred Cynthia Khan, Yang Licheng. And he's still working primarily in television in China as a director. He never really hit. His biggest movie by a long way was Twin Dragons, where he directed all the action scenes, which Ringo also was a director on. Choi Hark was the director of credit, but Ringo also worked on Twin Dragons, and I think he brought Chris on. A lot of interesting, the imagery here. I mean, the costumes, by the way, are designed by Bruce Yu, who I worked with on Gen X Cops, Gen Y Cops, and he just did the costumes for Jackie's new police story. And they all have a certain kind of Victoria's Secret kind of fetish bondage outfits. I don't know where he gets these. He obviously gets ideas from watching Wild at Heart. There's also a couple of costumes which are reminiscent of things from the movie Streets of Fire, which I think maybe is where they got the ballad song idea from. Because if you look at Simon Yam's kind of the shirt under his jacket, the way it's cut is a lot like the outfit that Willem Dafoe wears in Streets of Fire. But he there's a great. I mean, I think these two kind of mirrored villains. I mean, it's wonderful the way they're setting it up here. You get almost this kind of spaghetti western standoff with Anthony in the middle. And it's as Simon was saying, when they were on the set, they said, look, we're going to play it as this kind of really twisted love story that in a bizarre way, this bad guy is like, kind of in love. And you get some great subtitles, and he says, you have such charming eyes, which is a fantastic opening gambit.
There is. It's a very interesting choice to have a sexual energy between the good guy and the bad guy.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and it's like this movie, I think, probably has more subtitles quoted in kind of the lists of bad subtitles than any other, because they've got like they've got a few coming up which we'll mention as we get past them, but it was like Subtitle City. Again, in the background, this beautiful Thai temple. In the foreground, the trunk of a car full of guns. And anybody who's spent time in Thailand does know that it can be a dangerous place to live, despite the fact that it's such a peaceful. The people are friendly. Again, this juxtaposition. You keep seeing this Buddhist imagery juxtaposed with passion. They make a lot of this. It's beautifully shot, The Long Goodbye. And it's interesting because the characters presumably may well be reunited very shortly. But in reality, we know the audience is kind of, because they've seen these films, they kind of know the heist is going to go wrong. They know, because they've just been told, that Jeff is under orders to kill the Jane Fat character. Sorry, that Judge is under orders to kill Jeff. So they know this may well be the last farewell. So this is kind of playing to something the audience has knowledge of, but the characters do not.
Well, there's one thing we always say in acting: you must never know more than your character.
Right. I always think the only thing that dates these films is the phones. Look at that great brick she's carrying there. I mean, did you used to have one of those?
No, I couldn't afford them back then.
Oh, I used to, and I mean, it was terrible. I don't know how we used to manage.
I remember first coming to Hong Kong, though, you'd go in restaurants, and literally every table would have one of those phones on them.
And your suit pockets would be pulled out of shape. So here's the heist, and again, really nice editing by Tony Chow, who started working with John Woo on the movie Laughing Times, edited the first 3 Aces Go Places films, and also Ringo Lam's first international movie, Undeclared War. Really good editor, and I love, there's a number of montages here, but the way they now are cutting between the Reservoir Dogs heist description here to what's actually happening, and the juxtaposition of elements I think is really good, and kind of a little bit of non-linear, which is unusual. Hong Kong movies tend to be very linear in their execution, so this is like it's really showing the broad imagination of Ringo Lam as expressed by Tony Chow. Like everybody, Tony Chow, the editor, is a multitasker. He also edited Peace Hotel, which was Jane Fat's last Hong Kong movie, was a production manager on A Better Tomorrow 2, and the producer on Drunken Master 2. So he's a guy who gets... Sorry, Drunken Master 3. So he's a guy who gets around. This is interesting, this little dialogue here, because it establishes that there's a line there when Judge, Simon Yam's character, says, "I've been back to the home country, I saw your mom." And it explains why Anthony Wong, it kind of gives a rationale for later when Anthony Wong's going to betray Chow Yun-fat, why he might have some kind of existing bond with Judge. Otherwise, it's kind of an abrupt transition. So he's saying, okay, we're from the same home. Obviously, they're from the same hometown. So there's a certain familiarity. This is so funny. The other thing about this film is that they're meant to be going on a heist, so they should be all blending in, and they look like they're from Cirque du Soleil. This is the scene. This is the one everybody always quotes. Where this great line when he says, can you? She's like, "Can you see my underwear?" And he says, "I just saw a vomiting crab," and that turns up in so many lists of bad Hong Kong subtitles.
I wonder if he made that up himself.
You wonder, right? If he improv'd it. They certainly do. You having worked in Hong Kong movies, you know what it's like. Just before we do the take, everybody sits around and having ideas. Bonnie Fu, the girl there, never really got into the major league. She's also in a movie called Pom Pom and Hot Hot, which is a fun kind of action comedy. And she's with Jet Li in My Father is a Hero.
She's a terrific actress.
She is really good.
In this movie, she plays.
But you know what's funny is sometimes when you play an extreme character in an extreme film, it stops your career stone dead. It happened with Fancy Wong on Story of Ricky. Julian Sands always told me that happened with him with Boxing Helena. When you have a really extreme film that people don't like people didn't really like Full Contact when it came out in Hong Kong. It really got its reception overseas, and it kind of put the dampers on Ringo's career, because he did a couple of pictures after that. Then he went into the West to work with Van Damme and do that kind of stuff.
When I saw this movie first time was in the theaters here in Hong Kong.
Right.
I think I was the only guy in the theater.
Right.
Sitting there freezing.
Unfortunately, that was the genre, and it got no. Can you believe this film was unnominated at the Hong Kong Film Awards? It was not nominated in any category. Wow. In looking at the quality of it. Well, that was the boom time for Hong Kong films.
I must like bad movies.
Now it must. Well, this was the thing. It was this juxtaposition of like films that work in Hong Kong don't work in the West and vice versa. But they got like it's funny, they always pick the guy who's the meanest, like the big bodybuilder guy, Frankie Chin, when he's not playing this kind of role, the sweetest man on the planet. I used to go to that gym and talk with him, and a more nice person, gentle person. He actually quit the business for a while to go to live in Canada, and then he came back, and more recently he still acts, still works in films, playing like supporting roles. He was in a really cool film with Deo Wong and Danny Lee, which is called Walk In. He had he had a walk on in Walk In, and that's quite. Looking at the complexity of this car stunt sequence, it makes me realise how much more cooperative the Thai government are than the government in Hong Kong.
Well, I wonder if they actually closed down the streets to do this.
They did. There's bits where they didn't.
That's a lot of extra stunt cars then.
See, look on the bridge. They got to close the bridge down and do what you could do in America. And basically the difference in Thailand was, if you go to the government with enough money, and it's cheaper in Thailand than it is here, then you can actually pay to get stuff done. In Hong Kong, because in '92 it was really colonial government, and they didn't really have a lot of sympathy or interest in having a successful local film industry. They didn't support it in any direct way. So there was no sense like, well, we're going to, who's it like? This guy.
Mario Van Peebles look-alike.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? We were watching this movie in like just preparation, and you said I'd never noticed. He looks like Mario Van Peebles. It's not, everybody. Don't write in, but it looks like Mario Van Peebles.
It's great that they could get to do all this on the streets of Thailand.
Oh, totally.
It's a lot of precision drivers also for these scenes. You need precision drivers.
And I mean, it's like the you in Hong Kong. We're lucky; we've got some really good car guys. The car stunts were done by Lei Weilong, who I actually didn't know much about prior to seeing his work on this movie, but I'm really impressed. There's a couple of car stunt sequences coming up. Chris,
it's a good stunt. Anyone who tries throwing themselves backwards from a 3 or 4 foot height to land on concrete, that's tough.
Absolutely, yeah. That's one great thing about having Chris playing the role was that you didn't have to cut away to a double because Chris himself is such a trained expert stuntman.
Watching it again, I'm trying to see if he had pads in the back.
No,
but
in that tank top, it'd be really hard.
It's very hard with tank tops.
Well, he's a veteran. You can see him as an actor in the background, like Project A. He also worked as an actor on the 2 films he directed, Queen's High and Crystal Fortune Run.
That's brutal. And
that's him out of the picture. So I'll mention his other credits. He was action director on Royal Warriors, and he's acting in Royal Warriors and Middleman.
He was action director in Royal Warriors?
He was one of the guys working on the action. He also plays a role in the movie. There's a whole action team on there. He wasn't the action director of credit at that time.
It's one of Michelle's great movies.
That's it. Her second picture at D&D. So this is like, as you mentioned before, Anthony Wong's character arc, and really putting him through the mill here so that we can kind of understand why he would kind of change sides and work with Judge when we established before this really. And there's the whole thing about he's kind of borrowed money from a loan shark to pay for Chow's mother's funeral, which is like a big deal, obviously, in Chinese to have a proper funeral for the parent. There's very strong element of filial piety, which is one of the Confucian principles of Chinese culture. So this is a major thing that is mentioned earlier in the house, and it establishes the bond between them. So now we have this shift of focus to the bond between Anthony Wong and Simon Yam, who are from the same town in China. Getting out into this is like this. A lot of the car sequences. There's a longer print of the movie in Taiwan. The car sequences are actually, but the chase sequences are a bit longer. But there's some great elements here, and as you're mentioning, actually quite something to set up because you've got other drivers. You've got the road here with the other driver. Obviously, all the cars that we're seeing when we're seeing stunt sequences, those other cars are picture cars. One hopes.
There's a lot of coverage on this shot too. On this whole scene, there's a lot of coverage. I wonder how many cameras they use.
Let me tell you, when we shot recently on Twins Effect in Bangkok, the costs of shooting are really minimal. I was there for a long time on the Medallion. It really is a great place to shoot.
And time is money in the movies, and the more time you have, the more coverage you get. The more you have to edit.
The Ong Bak sequel they're doing, Tom Yong-gung, they're going to shoot exteriors in Australia, but the interiors are going to be in Thailand and stuff like this. They're going to do it there because it's just so much huge saving, and the production value ends up on the screen. But the Hong Kong movies are always known for like their physical martial artistry, but I think we have some of the best stunt guys in the world. They're on a par with them. Look at this, they're on a par with anybody out there. It's just, I guess, the martial arts is kind of what people are known for doing. But this is like a great sequence, and now going into hand to hand. That's like I think that's a kind of distracting technique. You take one look at that shirt and you'd be distracted long enough for him to. And the nice thing about Ringo's movies is there's a kind of things that are established in the film that pay off later. Like at the beginning, we see Simon doing magic tricks, and then this pays off in the fight. The turning point in the fight is he kind of magics a knife out from nowhere. Simon's game as well. Not a martial artist, but he lets himself be thrown around. And as you know, you do a whole bunch of takes falling onto stone.
In that heat.
Yeah. Boom. There he goes.
Oh.
Simon actually, utterly unlike this character, very generous and kind man. What kind of knife is that, Gary, he's using?
Tantos, a Japanese blade he's using.
Right, is it a fatal blade? He's trying to make it.
It is for Chow.
It is for Chow. He's trying to make it a fatal blade. But Simon
teeth.
Actually, I guess stemming from this time, sponsors 10 children in Thailand and pays for education and food and upkeep.
That's great. And
sends money there. He's just a sweet, dear, sweet man as a stuntman, I think, for that particular plunge off the side of the car. But they really go for it, and I think that's one of the things I really admire about Hong Kong actors. Even when they're acting physically, there's no sense of holding back. They're just full bore. Probably because they get screamed at by the director. First shot of this dog. This dog's actually going to be like kind of. It looks like the HMV. It looks like the HMV dog. His master's voice. And here, innocence in the line of fire. But it's a. They got like a this kind of a running motif through the rest of the movie. This innocent dog that survives the upcoming inferno of the house.
I think it's always a reminder for Chow of the damage that was done back in Thailand throughout the movie.
Yeah,
because you don't get many cutaways to the family or the girl, but the dog is always there reminiscent of the family.
And he gets his, and I think it's very smart the way they keep coming back to Anthony's reaction to it, because he is such a key figure in the rest of the film, and he's not really a player in this scene till the end, but by cutting away to him we get the emotional impact of the trauma he's going through, and it kind of explains why he makes the decisions that he does. And look at him fixing his hair in the mirror. That's just so cool. These touches are so cool.
Yeah, his personal choices.
Yeah,
awesome.
It's great. But in Chow being maimed, like losing fingers in the film, is kind of like another interesting thing. It reminded me a little. In other films like Year of the Dragon, at the end when somebody gets like a really debilitating injury, but their focus is such they just
it all adds vulnerability to the character. Because if your hero is too much of a tough guy, you never feel for him.
So here we have the turning point for Anthony, and this is actually one of there's a longer version of the film, I guess, that no longer exists. What is cut is a moment just now when Judge, played by Simon Yam, says to Anthony Wong's character, "Go in there, kill him, and bring me back those charming eyes. Bring me his eyeballs to show that that he's dead." And what they did is there's an encounter where they come in and actually Anthony Wong pretends to shoot Chow, and then says to him, "Okay, I've got to take the eyeballs out." And they take the eyeballs out from the dead guy. Or the guy, he shot the other guy, and there's a guy in the background who's dead. He takes those eyeballs out and brings them out. We see him carrying the eyeballs, and then in the cut sequence, I'll explain what happens when we get there. But that was actually Ringo Lam really taking it into real extreme Japanese kind of manga territory, and they shot it, edited it in, and then it was cut. The censors in Hong Kong said, "No, you can't have it."
It's almost like he's pushing the envelope.
Totally.
Saying to the executive producers, "I dare you to cut this out."
Now I'm going to exactly. Well, now I'm going to say, well, maybe he did that so they'd cut that out and leave the rest in, because by comparison, the film wouldn't seem so violent. But I'm saying it now. Probably they'll find the cut footage and it'll be on the DVD. I don't think it exists anymore, because I said to Ringo, "Did you keep it?" He says, "No, it's cut. We throw it away." And I'm like, "Why?" He says, "Well, nobody knew in '92 we would have DVD, and that they didn't used to put deleted scenes on VHS. Now you see in his right hand he's holding, I guess it's one eyeball or two. I'm not sure how many he's got there. And later he comes over. And what happens in the deleted scene is here, there's a moment when he gives the eyeball to Simon Yam, who pops it in his mouth like it's a gobstopper and sucks the blood off it. And actually, if you look carefully, I think there's a little bit extra blood running down Simon's face after that. This pretty hairy fire stunt. All this shot on location in Thailand, so they brought the full stunt crew. And I actually worked with the local Thai stunt people who have always been very good at supporting Hong Kong filmmakers and just come into their own with Ong Bak, which is the film that's really established. These guys really learnt their craft making films like this, working with Hong Kong filmmakers. Now they've come out and they're kind of beating us at our own game, because Ong Bak really was a Hong Kong style martial arts picture. Interesting thing, throughout the scenes in Thailand, the police keep turning up. In Hong Kong, we don't see hide nor hair of them. So I don't know if this was a statement by Ringo about the efficiency of the two police services. Because when you film in China, if you fire a gun in a movie, the police have to turn up within 3 minutes. Because as everybody knows, if you fire a gun in China, the police will be there in 3 minutes, no matter where you are. So in the film, you have to have that. And here we are. This is the Klongs, which is the famous connecting waterways of Bangkok. And the sequence here, with him going into the wilderness and being cured, being kind of treated in a by the monks and nuns, but by the monks. Very reminiscent of the end of Bullet in the Head, when Tony Leung is like left alone in meant to be Vietnam, but actually it's Thailand, and he's treated by. There's a whole sequence there, kind of what happens off camera when he's restored to health by the monks. And his really nice, never state what you can imply. This whole sequence here, where they just show a freeze frame and this wonderful juxtaposition, the split screen of these newspaper headings telling you what's happened in Thailand. And just very minimal reaction. That's all you need to see. And she's mourning, and it sets up the fact that she's going to have this kind of friendship with his supposed best friend, with Jeff's supposed best friend, that will deepen into something else. So I think and this song, sung by Alan Tam. And Alan Tam, Tam Wing Long, you remember from Armour of God and many other films, very popular local singer, still on the scene, just did some concerts with another singer called Hack and Lee. All the songs for the film composed by Teddy Robin. And I think Teddy probably plays guitar on them as well, because he's a really gifted guitarist. And he's a really extraordinary guy because he's overcome this physical disability to become not only an actor, but a composer and a producer and a director. You know, the usual multitasking Hong Kong kind of guy. I mean, his band was Teddy Robin and the Playboys. He did the score for the first 2 Aces Go Places films, Wong Kar-wai's Tears Go By, Tiger on the Beat, also with Chow Yun-fat, Ringo Lam's The Adventurers, and the Jet Li movie Black Mask. And he directed the film All the Wrong Spies, in which he also acted, and Legend of the Gold Pearl, in which he also acted. And you can see him acting in movies like Three Against the World and as Jackie's partner in Twin Dragons. That's Teddy Robin. So, like everybody else, including myself in Hong Kong, and you, actor turned director, we're all multitasking. We're all doing different things. Now, the swimming shot that we see of Chow, I guess, you know, because he's like Hakka, which is that, you know, kind of one particular ethnic group. But he's also from Lama Island, which is like kind of where they do all kind of fishing and stuff. He must be a good swimmer. Now, I think it's really him doing the swimming shot that's coming up.
Butterfly stroke, right?
This is really kind of spaghetti western territory, isn't it? With the maimed gunfighter who comes out. Smart they gave him the prosthetic fingers, though, because it makes it so much easier to match up the shots and, like, not to have him keep, you know, now I guess they'd have different manners of showing a maimed hand. But here they've got this. So he's, like, developing power. So maybe it's Lau Gao-wing's flashing back to the days of the one-armed boxer when the guy was, like, training for revenge. He's got the
guaranteed Chow's not doing those pull-ups.
No.
He's standing on a box that you don't see.
Is that how they do it?
Yeah,
No, here. Is this him? I think this is him. I think it's him swimming.
It's great technique.
He's doing very good. He's doing the. We'll freeze frame everybody and take a look. If he is, he should be. If they ever do a Hong Kong version of Man from Atlantis, he's in. But he was like, so we get this again. Great editing. Ringo Lam supervising Tony Chow as we get all this storytelling set to this song which is performed by Alan Tam. The song is called Jie Sai Gai Yi Feng Din, which basically means This Crazy World, and written partly performed by Alan Tam, sung by and then played by the guitar played by Teddy Robin. And if you're going to use a target in Thailand, coconuts are a good place to start. Great spaghetti western there. Very suggestive shot. And again, you know, something you don't often see in Hong Kong cinema. Here at Hart Avenue, and I think this is the Schooner. This pub here, very well-known hangout. You see it as an exterior and interior in a bunch of gangster movies from this era. And they actually got to beat the crap out of it for this sequence, which I was kind of surprised by, because it is a functional pub. And the guys here, the guy on the left is actually, believe it or not, the screenwriter for this movie, Nam Yin, who's also an executive producer on the picture. The guy on the right, Kao, the character Kao, is played by Victor Hon Kwon, who's also in City on Fire. Basically all the Ringo Lam films, City on Fire, Prisoner on Fire 1 and 2, School on Fire, Undeclared War. He's also in Operation Scorpio and Young and Dangerous 3, but evidently a key member of the kind of the stock players of Ringo Lam, and you see him in Ringo's movies. That's actually not the guy in the background there, who's like the bodyguard of Nam Yin. Looks like Eddie Meyer, our old friend Eddie, but actually on closer inspection, it's not. That guy in the background is an Eddie Meyer lookalike. It's actually not Eddie himself. And in this scene, actually interesting to see Anthony Wong's character has changed. Yeah, the transition that he's become this ruthless gunman, as we see in this moment here. Before you saw him like quivering and shaking, and now he's just really like one cold guy. And a lot of this violence was cut out from various markets. People found it really extreme, and in Hong Kong they just didn't. There's a good stunt.
It's not enough to shoot him in the neck. You got to kick him down the stairs too.
Absolutely.
You got to put the stunt in.
Now, tell me something. A lot of the times now in Hong Kong pictures, when you need an actor, a guy to say a few lines and then do a stunt, you get the stuntman and he does a few lines as an actor. Can you do that in the States? They do it now a lot. Yes. Yeah. So there's no like kind of firewall. There's not like Eddie in the background. It is, but it's not.
Where's his eye line looking?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah.
Because he's certainly not looking where the primary actor's
looking.
But
you know how chaotic Hong Kong movies, the speed with their shot. Sometimes the ADs don't always give the best direction to the supporting players. So maybe they just told him, just look there, whatever, do what you like. And that became the thing.
On a multiple scene like that where you got three actors, I mean, somebody will either hold up their fist and say, look, everybody look here, this is your eye line, your POV.
Sure.
So make sure everyone's looking at the same point.
Yeah. But you mentioned Nam Yin's character was the same guy that we saw at the beginning of the movie, who's like the Chinese gangster based in Thailand. So this is kind of a certain kind of energy here between them, because he's called for that guy's death in Thailand, and then now they're like kind of working on the same side. He's kind of called for Jeff's death, so there's like all this contradictory stuff going on in the mind of the Anthony Wong character. So people really found this kind of... By the way, I just want to mention the wrestler. This is a very Bruce Yu outfit. This shot, I'm really surprised that they managed to pull off. Maybe it's an insert, because it'd be quite tricky to do in the pub itself. Maybe the shot of the shooting the roof was an insert shot elsewhere on a soundstage, and they just matched it up to the kind of decor here. They're getting their money's worth out of these stairs, aren't they? And throwing people to and fro.
He likes that M16, doesn't he?
Yep, absolutely. It's a muscle gun for a muscle guy.
Exactly.
But this girl's full bore. Bonnie Fu has just played it absolutely straight, and I think just maybe people are horrified. Look at the very fast movement of the camera there. This guy's like Terrence Yin, the boyfriend of Simon Yam, but it's actually not. It looks like the young Terrence Yin, but I don't believe it is. Very fast movements there, because at Hart Avenue, no matter what time of day you're there, you're going to have people standing pointing, hey, look, they're making a movie. So you kind of like very fast.
Would they need permits to shoot in the street like that?
In those days, they would need them, but get them, they did not. So they would be moving fast and loose to get the shots they needed, and then move on before the police came. Here's the cat people shot. This is very much like the original Val Newton Cat People. Later, there was a remake which had the same sequence. And they actually had a special DP, Chan Hongwing, who came in to shoot the underwater footage that you see here, because obviously that's a very specific technique, and so they have a special cameraman who came in and shot underwater. I'm very grateful we are, because Anne looks great in that black swimsuit, doesn't she? Nice work, Mr. Chan. A great way to intro the returning, like, kind of vengeful presence of the Chow Yun-fat character, to kind of just see him through this water. Should mention a funny touch. The guy that Anthony is playing chess with, his character name is Chao Sang, which is Anthony Wong's real name. So he's kind of playing with somebody who has his name. It's just one of those little gimmicky things. Now this swimming pool is...
Actually, it's the pool we used in City Hunter, which was the interior. It was supposed to be the swimming pool that was on the ship, but we actually shot the pool in Hong Kong. Right.
This is the Shan Andalou shot there with the huge eye. So this is meant to be on the ship in City Hunter, and you guys were filming there. Whereabouts in town? On the Kowloon side, right? And you were there with all those gorgeous girls, and that big burly fellow.
It was a nice day of work.
It was, wasn't it? That was a reshoot, though, wasn't it? You'd shot it already?
No, it wasn't a reshoot.
As I remember it, you told me at the time they'd shot it once, and the girls weren't pretty enough, and they shot it again.
Really? That may be true. I mean, I've forgotten a lot, but if that was true. Yeah. We had shots and stuff, yes, in Japan. And maybe that was the reshoot. Yeah.
But you have the worst memory of any living man.
I'm sorry, I do.
So I know. I always say to Gary, remember this? And he's like, how do you know that? I said, you told me?
I live in the moment.
Must be. Here's where he says Chao Sang, and then Chao Sang's been knocked out by Chow. But it's very atmospheric and a great way to bring back the character, which I think is really cool to have, Chow Yun-fat back on the scene. And it's like they obviously are not sure if he's a human or some kind of vengeful spirit who's come back with a great reaction from Anthony. That is how you'd react seeing somebody who you thought was dead come back.
It's a real wake-up call for him, because we've already seen that he's gone into this really tough guy, emotionless character. And all of a sudden he's back to the old Simon Yam before Chow was dead.
So they got some great underwater shots here, and it was worth bringing in a underwater cameraman to get the stuff that they got. Great year for Anthony Wong this year. He was in Hard Boiled, and these films really put him on the map internationally. Later, of course, he would do films like showy roles in films like Bun Man. You see him in Heroic Trio 1 and 2, Black Mask, Beast Cops, which he won every acting award known to man, The Mission, in which he was fantastic, Infernal Affairs, which again, recognised. I think any year he's in a movie where he has a supporting role, he'll be the best supporting actor. I mean, he was overlooked. He was in so many movies one year as best supporting actor. He was competing against himself like 3 times. I mean, Just One Look, a movie that we did at EMG during the time I was there. I thought he was wonderful in that, and it was a part that was really nothing, on paper, but he made something out of it. This is another interesting sequence. The first scene was kind of like that we saw Anne Bridgewater dancing was really more like a flash dance thing, and this is kind of really getting into the old Cirque du Soleil stuff, kind of funky ethnic moves. But she obviously worked with the choreographer. She's doubled for the acrobatics and the splits and what have you, but she really put in some time to look the part.
Ringo actually gives this routine a lot of time, a lot of coverage, which it's really not a story point. It doesn't move the story along in any way, so it's interesting that he gives it such a...
You could actually cut the scene out and wouldn't really mean anything, would it? I mean, it's not like kind of advancing the plot, But I guess this was an extra reason people might want to come see the movie, is to see Anne Bridgewater dancing in a sexy manner. And hey, are we complaining? I tell you, we are not.
This reminds me of the dance sequence in the John Travolta movie Staying Alive.
That's right. I guess they looked at all the dance movies of that time, and then they kind of... I hadn't thought of that. You're absolutely right. Yeah. So it's like, and filmed, I believe, at the Caesar Karaoke nightclub, which also was a location in the Jackie Chan film Crime Story. Anne Bridgewater made her debut in Michael Mack's movie Isle of Fantasy, and as I mentioned earlier, she was Inspector Wears Skirts, Operation Pink Squad. She's also worked for the director Pu Chi Leong. Pu Chi Leong actually also directed a Van Damme film recently, so it seems to be a kind of a way station on every Chinese director's career to make a Jean-Claude Van Damme film. Fatal Love also starred Leslie Cheung and Cherry Chung. You can see Anne Bridgewater in They Came to Rob Hong Kong, Curry and Pepper, and her last movie is Tom, Dick and Harry, which was a very funny comedy. Yeah, in 1993. I'm not making this up. And she's now married and retired from the industry. And so that's always the case. When you get married and you're an actress in Hong Kong, you have to stop making films. It's a rule, unless you're Christy Chung or somebody else like that. So it's kind of, they're very strict about it. I should mention something about the music and the dance sequence. The first company to bring out this movie in England on video was called Made in Hong Kong, and they were actually an offshoot of a music company called Vinyl Solution. And when they were negotiating for this film, they mentioned that they actually owned some of the music being used, and they had not actually been licensed. It was by a French composer. They owned the rights, the mechanical recording rights. And Ringo and everybody just kind of shrugged their shoulders like, well, we didn't know. We just thought it sounded cool. Great lighting, and you got the swastika in the background, and this great production design on the picture. The art director of the film, Ray Lam, also was the art director on Project A Part 2, which I thought was a very well designed movie. But the use of color and lights here, and great DP as well. I mean, Lau Hongchun, not known as one of the top ranked DPs in Hong Kong, but really pulls one out here. I mean, it's a great looking picture from start to finish. But this, I always thought it was a bit contrived, having the motorcycle in the underground there. It was kind of like an MTV shot, It's like, did he really need to come down on a bike for this particular thing?
My motorbikes are always associated with heroes. You can go back to James Dean, Steve McQueen. You can always associate the motorbike with a hero. And
I think all that generation of people coming out like John Woo and Ringo Lam, this is with their screen idols, with the Alain Delons and the James Deans. So they're really playing to that with these gangster pictures. Mm-hmm. And there's certainly the look in the movie is the wild one. It's all this is going on. It's funny looking at Chow. He's always known as being a gunplay actor or a straight dramatic player, but he's actually worked with all of the great action directors. I mean, he worked with Yuen Woo-ping on Postman Strikes Back and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Ching Shidong on Witch from Nepal and The Killer. Not many people realize Ching Shidong actually was the action director for the movie The Killer. He worked with Corey Yuen, I think, on Treasure Hunt, and recently with Stephen Dongwai on Bulletproof Monk. So he's worked with everybody as an action star, worked with all the great action directors, but he's still known as the guy with the guns, or as an actor's actor. Anthony Wong, is obviously, when you mention actors, he's like totally the guy. And really, in this film, I mean, the idea of having, now of course he's confronting the returned, it's like old boyfriends are always a headache, right? Now he's dealing with the fact that the old boyfriend actually turned up and he's got a bike and a gun. So what are you going to do? Very tricky. So have you seen many of Anthony's movies other than this?
I saw obviously The Killer and Hard Boiled. You said The Killer, right?
Yeah.
He was in Hard Boiled.
He was in Hard Boiled. He's not in The Killer. He's in Hard Boiled. And Bunman was the one that really put him on the map.
Psychotic.
Yeah, I mean, he's won so many acting awards. I mean, it's almost like they should just engrave his name on it every year before they have the ceremony, because it's always him. And also he has great range, he's played kind of avuncular figures, like in Princess D. He's like the father of Daniel Wu, and it's like he can do that, and at the same time he's really capable of doing good guy cop roles like Infernal Affairs and these extraordinary villainous parts. I worked with him on Twins Effect, also on The Medallion, and he can do English dialogue roles as well, and I think it's a shame that nobody from Hollywood has yet kind of called him to do a movie. It's confusing. There's another Anthony Wong who's in the Matrix video game, has a small role in the second Matrix film, but it's another guy. It's another guy called Anthony Wong. It's not Anthony Wong Chow San. Now, this shot, I believe, was filmed right next to the central escalator in the mid-levels, because these windows are very distinctive. And they went in there and they got the rain machine outside. They wanted to have this specific look. But it's very hard to find these old-style buildings in Hong Kong. Hardly any of this movie was shot in studio. It's pretty much on location. And this is really wonderful atmospheric scene. But if you go up the central escalator, as indeed we will, and we go back to Soho, you see like these kind of normally empty apartments kind of overlooking the escalator, and this I think is one of them. And now again, great use of montage to kind of move our emotions for the characters, and to kind of at the same time kind of setting up what's going to happen next to give it a resonance that it might otherwise not have. And full props to Teddy Robin for his use of the way the score works with the images. Ringo said to me that every movie he does, he picks an instrument that's going to kind of symbolize the movie. School on Fire was the bagpipes, because he remembered hearing the bagpipes at like the graduation ceremony from his English school in Hong Kong. And so it works really well. You wouldn't think it would, but it does. And here it was like, okay, we're having a rock and roll movie. We've got motorbikes, we've got leather jackets and all Harley Davidson wear, which means we're going to need guitars as well, because the guitar is like the rock and roll, obviously the prime rock and roll instrument.
Now, why did he take the dog to Hong Kong? Why didn't he leave it with the girl that survived, whose dog it was?
You got to wonder, right? Plus, how the hell did he get that dog through immigration? Quarantine, right? That's harder to do than bringing his guns in. So, he's got like the doggy to care for. It's a very traditional Chinese place where you... no, I can't say cemetery, because it's like a burial home. You have these small black and white photographs of the deceased. It's interesting when you shoot there. They give you permission to shoot there, but you can never show the people clearly on the grave, and because it's just bad form. So you always have them kind of in the background. You can never zoom in and do a close up and say, look at so and so. If you do that, you have to put a fake picture on there. But this also it's going to this juxtaposition of the sacred and the profane all the way through the film. We see really quite evident imagery, like religious imagery, counterpointed with this really intense violence. And I think this scene we're about to see is particularly, speaks to that, which is the horrible death of the writer Nam Yin. I mean, it must be the dream of every director to kill their annoying writer, the scriptwriter. Maybe that's just my experience. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me when I work on films. Like Benny, how Benny Chan would have loved to have tied me to a chair halfway through Gen Y Cops and pumped me full of lead. So you've got this kind of, and again, it's in, they've rented the place, they've gone in there, but this actually is a functional funeral home, and they've paid money to the funeral home owner and gone in and shot this sequence where, which is going to end in bloodshed. And this was a scene that was really cut. I mean, what they did for the most prints of the movie, the first time, we didn't see Anthony come in and shoot, the first time he shoots, you cut. But here we see the full version with the guy's head getting pumped full of holes. And you can totally see why. I mean, I think from 1992 till now, some aspect, we've had something like Itchy the Killer come out, which puts everything else to shame. But at this time, it was considered to be quite extreme to have this level of violence, this level of bloodshed. So here he goes. Boom. How have they done this, Gary? Because you're going to see...
Well, there's a lot of coverage on you, so
yeah.
You see.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is the actor's not going to be there.
Yeah. Just splashing the blood down the back.
You never see the gun in the head.
Right.
In a
one
two-shot.
thing. So relatively an easy deal, and they cutting back and forward very obviously to the Buddhist figures and blood dripping down. Maybe I saw another print. I do remember seeing a shot, maybe on a longer print, where you actually saw things coming. When did they do the squib coming out the back of the head? How do you do it when you actually got somebody's head with like hair on it?
You can do it. It's just pointed out.
Have you had that done to you? You've never been killed in a movie, have you? You're always killing other people.
Yeah, but no, you see it done. Yeah, they can put squibs right here, right in the middle of your forehead.
Yeah. Does it burn?
If they turn it the wrong way. I had one on my shoulder that they face away from you, the explosive side of it, but they actually face away from you. They put the squib on your arm and it faces away from you, the explosion.
Yeah.
But as I was running with a gun, the squib turned around and turned towards my face. And so when my shoulder got shot, it went off in my face and took all the skin off my left cheek. That was it, near the end of recoil.
Oh.
So for 2 days, they couldn't put any makeup on the one side of my face.
What happened if you got like permanently scarred? I mean, heaven forbid, the insurance covers you.
I imagine it would, but
yeah,
it's not intentional.
Right. So here we are back in the nightclub, and this is kind of very indicative. I was actually coming in out of Hong Kong during this era. This is a very typical Hong Kong nightclub from this time. These guys are having a lot more fun than I ever had, but it's a good kind of place. Frankie Chin here on the left, Chin Chi Leung is his Chinese name. He's sometimes billed as Frankie Chan, which is kind of confusing because there's another guy doing movies who is called Frankie Chan. First movie that he was in was called Perfect Match, which was an early unsuccessful vehicle for Stephen Chow Sing-chi.
Look at her necklace; it's got a peace sign on it.
Yeah, nice, isn't it?
With the dichotomy.
Again, dichotomy of the. Yeah. I didn't notice that. Yeah, you're right. He's also in the movie Into the Fire, which is one of the many unsuccessful attempts to make the actor Chin Siu-ho into an action lead. He's with Andy Lau Datwa in Crocodile Hunter. You can see him in Magic Cop, The Story of Ricky, Operation Scorpio, and he was actually on a movie I worked on with Donnie Yen. I was a producer on a movie called High Voltage, which was shot in the Philippines, and he's in that too. And I mentioned the last movie I've seen Frankie in was Walk In. I think now he divides his time between Hong Kong and Canada, and he actually has a brother who's also a bodybuilder guy who also works occasionally on films. But super nice guy. If you come to Hong Kong and you want a real sweat and rust gym, Gary, you should go there for one workout one day just to experience it.
Power Gym. Old gyms.
Power Gym. Have you been there?
It's funny. Not the one on Nathan Road in Kimberley, is it?
It's on the corner.
On the second floor?
Yeah, that's the one.
I've been there. I have worked
Frankie's
out
gym. And it's real sweat and rust.
It's so old-fashioned, the equipment. You really have to use your imagination.
Yeah. And then they got on the 13th floor of that building is the Shaolin Temple, not Shaolin Temple, the Zhengmomen, the Fist of Fury place, Hong Kong branch of Zhengmomen. This great reveal. Just now you got the lady from Shanghai shot with all the mirrors. Or as you called it, the Enter the Dragon. You pay your money. Either Lady of Shanghai with Orson Welles or Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee. I'd rather it was from Bruce Lee as well. Though it's funny because everybody always says that Robert Clouse, the director of Enter the Dragon, borrowed that from Lady from Shanghai. But Robert Clouse himself, when he was alive, he's passed away now, swore blind that he had never seen Lady from Shanghai and had no idea about that. So he saw his wife into the mirrors in a hotel, and that was reflective for that reason. So this is actually quite a different location from where we saw the club, because they needed to have set it up with the steps and all this stuff. I like this moment. He's about to leave, but when she's hurt, he can't, because he still cares for her. But he's kind of put all those feelings aside on his quest for revenge. This movie was the difference of the way the film was received in East and West is so interesting. In Hong Kong, it was really, oh God, what a violent film. It's not enjoyable. And Chow Yun-fat, we don't like to see him as this kind of guy. We want to see him as a suave hitman, or we want to see him as a funny lover. And in the West, it was embraced as what an incredible, influential film. And Ringo Lam was hailed as a genius.
It's kind of how they like their heroes in the West to be kick-ass heroes.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot that pertains to the West in here. The bikes or the Harley theme. Yeah. It's sort of very much an American theme to it. The gun violence.
Sure. Anne's really good in this film, and you almost, obviously she's out of the industry now, but I think it's a shame, I don't know for what reason, this is the first and only film where she was really given any dramatic range. This shot actually here in Kowloon Tong is one of the few places where you can actually have a car come up next to the MTR tracks like this. And this sequence with Virgin, this is a great character name for her.
Yeah, I was going to say, what a great name for this character.
Yeah. Her Chinese name is Fu Yukching. And as I say, a crying shame that she doesn't get more to do. This pretty raunchy stuff. Actually for American cinema, this is nothing. But Hong Kong was, in terms of sexual matters, was very, you had Category 3 films where you had sexual stuff being depicted, or you had mainstream cinema, which was, in this era, really quite straight-laced. So this is really quite something for this time, that they should actually have this kind of scene taking place on camera. Talking like Chow Yun-fat, he's such a fantastic actor. Why do you think he hasn't got to do movies of this quality in America as yet?
I wonder if his movies haven't succeeded as much in America as his Hong Kong ones, and I wonder if it has anything to do with having to act in English and think in English, as opposed to acting and thinking in Cantonese, your natural
I think
birth language. Because even just being told to act with an accent, personally speaking, when they wanted me to act with an American accent, I was focusing more on the accent than internalizing what the character's supposed to be going
Absolutely. Through. No, it does become an obstacle, doesn't it? I think the energy expended to keep her skirt down during that scene must have been Bruce Yu. Bruce Yu, I think some designers design for the woman they'd like to meet. I think Bruce actually designs for the woman he'd like to be. So everybody's wearing all this kind of outfits. These the men and women are wearing all these incredible outfits. Should mention Nam Yin, the guy that died 10 minutes ago. He also wrote Prison on Fire and was nominated at the Hong Kong Film Awards for writing that film. And he also wrote Wild Search, which was Ringo Lam's take on the movie Witness. He wrote Undeclared War, Touch and Go, which is a film which Sammo Hong starred in for Ringo. And he also produced The Suspect, which was also shot on location, or partly on location, in the Philippines, also for Ringo Lam. So really a talented scriptwriter. Though, to look at him, he was such a convincing bad guy, you would not pick him out as an intellectual writer, in a crowd of just... That's Hong Kong for you, though. Everybody's multitasking, everybody's doing lots of different stuff at the same time. And that's part of what makes it such an exciting place. This is kind of cool, juxtaposing the frantic shagging with the train rumbling by. How was it for you? This is actually a longer version of this scene. There was the Hong Kong release print has a shorter one. They actually didn't have the longer dialogue between Anthony and the girl. So here, of course, he's kind of used this kind of unorthodox tactic to get her to kind of open up. Kind of open up is the right phrase. We get open up, and they find out where the bad guy's weapons are stored, which is going to lead into our big finale. This kind of again, there's all these iconic images of rock and roll. You've got guitars, leather jackets. In the old days, it was switchblades. Now it's the ballad song, and having sex in a car. These are all the things. The songs from all the songs of Bruce Springsteen and all those kind of the rockers. That's what they were talking about. I'm going to go out in my Harley. I'm going to drive around in my car. I'm cool, and I'm going to get laid by doing it. And that was what that whole thing was about. Did you ever ride a motorbike?
Yes, I did. I had a Honda in the States.
Really?
I used to ride around, yeah, but it gets too dangerous on the freeways there.
Do you have to wear a helmet?
Yep,
in the States?
have to wear a helmet.
Did you ever ride around without a helmet, looking cool with a leather jacket?
No, I couldn't. You couldn't ride around without a helmet.
How about in movies? Do you you get shots that you've done shots there riding bikes?
Yes, I have.
And
no
but when you're shooting
helmet.
stuff, no helmet, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Pretty. What kind of speed have you gone at without a helmet on a motorbike?
You never go that fast because you usually have a camera car that has to keep up with you.
Okay.
And if you're going too fast, the
you
camera
can
car
leave them
can't go to
standing.
it, yeah.
All right, you're started for 10. What other groundbreaking Hong Kong movie has an ice factory as a major location?
The Big Boss.
Hey! Now, if you didn't know that, I would have to leave the building. To tell you that you don't know something like that. But
it's funny. I mean, I hate to talk about myself, but I did a movie called Capital Punishment, and we did a scene in an ice house. And in all these movies, I always see people punching ice and kicking ice and smashing it.
Yeah.
But when you work with the real ice blocks, we were hitting these ice with sledgehammers, and it wouldn't even crack.
Wow.
So it goes to show that it's...
That Shining Dragon, the Bruce Lee story with Jason Scott Lee?
It's all fake, trust me. When you get that thick, dense ice like that, you can't...
But there is a guy they call the Iceman. I'm forgetting his name now. He was like one of those Lima Lama practitioners. And he actually does these ice breaks. These guys, they break the ice with their fists.
You know what? They fake a lot of bricks when they do breaking demonstrations. They bake the bricks in the oven.
What about the ice?
It's the same with wood. So if it's not dense all the way through the solid ice, yes, it can be broken, but I swear to you, there is no way we could have broken those. I actually had to kick a guy in the move, and I hit the ice.
And you're like,
and it sent such shockwaves up my leg, and my heel was injured for days afterwards.
Really?
And I had shoes on, Dr. Martens.
See, you knew how the Titanic felt. If it was strong enough for the Titanic, it's strong enough for you. A lot of this sequence cut from the original video release of this movie, so it's great it's coming out on DVD, and you can actually see the full extent of the action of the Lau Gao-wing choreographed action. This is the most gory and the most extreme you ever got from the director Lau Gao-wing. He's such a, known for doing stylized action. And a lot of help, I think, from Ridley Choi Boa, because he's great at doing the shots where you are setting up the shots where you get the big reaction, because he can do them all himself, Ridley, such a physically adept person. And so they'd have he can kind of rig it up so the stuntmen can fly in different directions. But this is really brutal. They don't have the Chinese weapons, so he's kind of like whatever's there will be the Chinese weapon. And even in a moment, I just pointed out there's a shot when Anthony uses a gun, but the motion that he does before he shoots is a Chinese kung fu movie motion. So it's kind of this kind of blend. But this is the great thing about Hong Kong filmmaking is they come into a location like, okay, what can we use? And they put everything together.
And the reactions from the stunt guys. I mean, just from a simple leg sweep, the way he reacts is wonderful. Right.
Again, playing back to Bruce in the Ice House, he had all the kind of things and there's his kind of weapon of choice. This is called cut, out of existence on the original print, the ballad song, because the weapons were not allowed to be in the country. You weren't allowed to see them on film. It was like a big furore because it was a charismatic weapon, like the nunchaku had been. Oh, and this shot definitely. Of all the shots in the movie, I think this is the shot that's cut from the most prints, the knife in the hand shot there, which is really kind of, cold-blooded. You can see why Hong Kong audiences were shocked at Chow Yun-fat's character here. This is the movement I'm talking about. It's a real kind of kung fu leg twist down, but then he's using a gun to finish the guy off. And of course, by doing so, setting them up. This guy looks, as you mentioned, looks like Kwok Choi. You said we were watching the film before we actually did the commentary. It looks like Kwok Choi, the action director from Hard Boiled, but it's not. This is the movie with the lookalikes, isn't it? There's a guy that looks like Mary Van Peebles, one looks like Eddie Meyer. Well, it wasn't me, babe. And there's one guy that looks like, just now we got the Kwok Choi lookalikes. And then it's all shot in Hong Kong, and it's interesting because the interior is this ice factory, which is up in the New Territory somewhere. And then when you actually get the exterior of it, they're in Aberdeen with the boat.
Look, bullets are hitting these eyes. Oh, the squibs on them. It's not even cracking them.
Right.
Not real bullets, obviously.
So that shows you even Bruce Lee was not strong enough. Now, would this work? What are your thoughts? Great shot. The bullet comes. If you put out one of those CO2 canisters, would it blow up like that?
Cinematic license.
It is. Do you think it would work in reality?
I don't, to be honest with you. I don't know if they would, unless they were metal piercing bullets.
Yeah, because it's like whenever they have a cigarette lighter and you throw it and it sets the petrol. Apparently, the flame would be extinguished by the liquid. You wouldn't necessarily if you just had a cigarette lighter. That's what somebody told me. If it's a big pool of petrol on the ground, if you just throw a match on it, it won't work. You have to get something stronger.
It's like in all the movies you see they throw a grenade and there's a massive explosion with fire.
Look at these guys, really stuntmen are really going for it. This sequence. This is all in Aberdeen, where further around from where the opening of Enter the Dragon was shot. And this is Chow's boy really going for it. Look at this. Oh, Chow's stuntman earning his pay. Damn. And I'm thinking the guy should be limping away. This is really funny. And then he's like, no way, I'm not jumping. Hell no.
That's our reaction.
That's smart, because it's like the... but having said that, you've jumped for some fairly impressive heights.
Like that.
Not that kind of height. That's a pretty...
Put me on the descender.
Yeah,
I think about
that's for sure. I like this. The guy's still got his gun, but he's like, okay, this ain't going to work. Time out.
Wheels.
So he takes a dive into the harbour. But rather him than me. Actually, even if it was Chow swimming in the Klong in Thailand, rather him than me. You're more likely to die from that than from the jump. It's so foul, the water around Hong Kong, I'm sorry to say. So all this U.S. Army, arming the world. It's nice to know, isn't it? Let freedom reign. And here they are with kind of a boatload of grenades. And it's interesting, this scene, because when I first saw it, I really felt that Chow's character, even though Anthony's acting like, okay, we're mates again, we've done this mission together, Chow had another game. And somehow in the scene, when I saw his acting, he really was kind of like playing it. There's some subtext. And now I look at it, I can't see what made me think that. But there was something about his playing of the scene. I didn't believe he had 100% brought Anthony back into the fold. And maybe I was just reading something into it. I hadn't seen the film before. I was watching it for the first time. But that's something I think, about Chow's acting that's really extraordinary about him as a screen actor, is that he can imply so much just, from very simple expressions. So here we are back at the Caesar and setting up this reunion of our hero and anti-hero, our hero and villain. And there's a kind of you got to have like your token white guy in every Hong Kong movie, and he's ponytailed barman. So he has his little moment there. This sequence coming up is really extraordinary because it's like marked the first time with the bullet POV. There was another movie where there was one shot where I saw it was a movie called Proud and Confident, which was like a SWAT team movie. It was copying Top Gun, but instead of planes, they were SWAT team guys in Hong Kong, and it starred Andy Lau. And they had one time a sniper fires a bullet, and it's bullet POV. But this is the first time I've actually, in this sequence coming up, that I actually seen the POV shot used to this extent. And in fact, I don't know, what Hollywood movies have we had bullet time POVs?
I can't remember the name of one, but I remember seeing one after this.
Runaway? Tom Selleck? That was one movie that had it in. And I don't know if they did any Matrix. Matrix, of course, had bullet time as a whole different concept. But here it's like kind of really, used to different effect. Or when they actually get to the gunfight scene, the gunfight scenes are later in the picture. You were saying?
I just saw an Arab in full robes in the background. What was the Arab with full white robes? be
Sure.
doing, and it looks like Jesus Christ.
I know. Well, this is the kind of guy you get. You see, you get like showing Hong Kong as an international city. You've got like a white guy there on the right. You've got a white barman, a white DJ, white barman, and you've got an Arab in the background. But, Arabic people from the Middle East have spent a bit of money in Hong Kong over the years. Great big sign that's saying Hong Kong in case you weren't sure where the film was located. So they got like providing what's believed to be an accurate reflection of club life. Whenever you see the white guy in the movie, in these movies of this era, they will have gone down to the notorious flop house at Chungking Mansions and stood in the hallway and said, "Who wants to be in a movie?" And all these drug addicts and backpackers or backpacking drug addicts come staggering out into the daylight like kind of worms when you lift a rock. And you say, "Okay, we want to be in a movie." And then you say, "Who can do martial arts?" And they'll say, "Me." And you say, "Who's a world champion?" "Still me." And that's how you get these guys. And some of the people say, "Oh, okay, I saw that movie. That guy wasn't very good." I'm like, listen, the fact that he even showed up and stood upright for the duration of the scene was like an accomplishment. Don't ask too much. Simon has that little Superman quiff thing there going on for the whole picture. Jackie Chan had that in Rush Hour 2, and it drove him crazy. After every take, the makeup lady would come running in and kind of just fix that little bit of hair. He's got his that crocodile skin. Do you remember Wild at Heart, Nicolas Cage?
Yes, I do.
Got the old crocodile skin jacket and the old Elvis thing going on. Simon, again, played a good bad guy in a number of movies. You see him in Tiger Cage, Final Run, Dr. Lamb, which was another serial killer movie, and he was so good in Bullet in the Head. And he worked on a run of films with Johnny To, Expect the Unexpected, PTU, Breaking News. He also played a gay character in Drunken Master 3 and was a weird tap dancing hitman in Looking for Mr. Perfect, which is the most recent Ringo Lam Hong Kong movie to date, which I think was shot in Malaysia, and not a very good picture. And Simon also going to be seen in Lara Croft Cradle of Life, and soon to be seen in a Van Damme movie, Wake of Death. I think it's Wake of Death. And what is it with Jean-Claude Van Damme and people from this movie? Everybody seems to be in a Van Damme film. It's extraordinary. Well, Ringo, of course, did go to stateside and directed Van Damme in Maximum Risk and The Replicant and From Hell. Replicant, you were approached for.
Well, there was conversations.
So you would have been another, 5 degrees of separation on this. You'd have worked with, because all these people working on different films with different fellow cast members of this movie, but you would have actually been one of them because you'd have worked with Van Damme and Ringo on Replicant. I don't know what part you'd have played.
Me neither. I don't know why he called me.
I read a review of this, and somebody was saying, "Oh, Ringo Lam came to America, and he made these awful, awful films." And I actually felt Maximum Risk was one of the better.
I have to agree. I was going to say that.
Van Damme films.
I think it was one of his best movies.
Replicant also. From Hell, I thought didn't work, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And it was really he did a really good job with both those films in the States. I mean, of course, they're Jean-Claude Van Damme straight-to-video B movies, but I mean, Maximum Risk actually did get a theatrical release, but Replicant was a straight-to-video. But for all of that, it looked really cool. But when you mentioned that, I was like, geez, I must have had a different script before, because there wasn't really a role in that for a guy that can do the kind of things that you can do.
When I read the script, I actually called and said, "There's nothing in here for me." I mean, the 2 main parts are Van Damme
and Damme,
and then you've got Michael Rooker.
Well, maybe they're going to CGI you as a Van Damme Part 2. And then you would have really. Now we're coming into our CG gunfight here at the Caesar nightclub, and it's like this is situated on very prominently on Nathan Road in Chim Sa Choi. It's kind of a prop that breathes. The gay boy, the boyfriend of Simon, never gets to do anything in the whole movie.
I wonder how many people they auditioned for that part.
Yeah, you know what? I think they probably people really would love to work on a big movie with Simon Yam when he just come in and say, "Hey, you got to be gay for these scenes." They would have them kind of lining up outside. We never have trouble finding people wanting to be. It's funny, Hong Kong people are quite low key, but people like to be in movies, and we never really have trouble finding people who want to come on and do stuff.
I think that's worldwide.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Do you want to be in a movie? Sure. This dance sequence is again kind of the dance sequence we got Anne Bridgewater doing in the background is quite reminiscent of that kind of was it Staying Alive?
Yeah,
that was one directed by
directed.
Stallone. Extraordinary to think of Stallone directing a dance movie. It's kind of Staying Alive meets kind of disco fever kind of thing, like aerobics. Some Taibo moves getting in there. But that was kind of like very kind of late 80s, early 90s to have this kind of
I'm chewing
dance
on the lemon
sequence
like
going.
that.
Yeah. There's a couple of moments. I didn't mention it earlier. He does this kind of rubbing of the lip and tasting of the blood. It's got the kind of the old little bit of Bruce Lee in there. So I think Ringo is kind of filtering into this film a lot of the influences of his own youth in watching movies, going from the American underground, leather biker movies, the Roger Corman films, and the Bruce Lee thing going on there. So here's this kind of wonderful juxtaposition of elements of this dance routine going on, and the back and forth between the various gang members. Frankie's doesn't have a huge range of technique, but he looks when he kicked, it looks like the guy would probably go flying. Yeah. So Anthony kind of getting his comeuppance here. Did the when they were shooting the gunplay stuff here, I'm thinking, actually the CG is quite tricky to put the effects shot in there. Now, of course, everything's done. Anything you can get away with using CGI, they do. And I think my own feeling is, I don't know what you think about this, I don't think CG has come as far as filmmakers convince themselves that it has. Because the shots here look primitive, but I saw stuff in the Mummy movies that look just as bad. Are you a CGI fan?
I would rather see people doing stuff.
Yeah. I like when it's done well, when you don't know, when somebody has to tell you after the fact, like the CGI house in Fight Club. And I must be the only guy on the planet who thought that was a real set. And I said, no, it was all built CG. I was like, wow, I didn't know that. So that impresses me. When stuff is really CG, it kind of takes me out the film and I go, oh, they used CG. There's even a couple of CG shots in Ong Bak, which is one of the most real films out there. They had a coin spinning up and you just go, oh, it's fake. It's a CG shot. And
I think for the right kind of movie, I mean, if you're going to watch a superhero movie or a futuristic, obviously in The Matrix it worked. I mean, the original Matrix I loved. I thought it did everything very well. It fit the movie. Right.
And we play again to the fact that Simon's character is meant to be able to do magic tricks. He does this kind of quick release draw, and Anthony getting it in the leg there. Boom. This really is great, isn't it? It's kind of like Ringo at the height of his game. This is the scene everybody always talks about. Slow movie, camera showing off, camera showing character. It really is it's the same as spaghetti western thing. Two guys face off, and we see the reaction to the field. Boom, and here we are. And we hitch a ride on the bullet. You get the bullet POV, and it's just ridiculous, but it really works.
Yeah, I loved it when I first saw it. I thought it was tremendous.
I mean, on the big screen. I mean, I remember you and I going to see it at the late lamented Scala Cinema in King's Cross in London. And on the big screen, you're like, damn. I mean, it looks great here, but particularly a lot of these films, it'd be wonderful if you could do a road show and take the film out and show it on the big screen with proper sound. It would be, all the more powerful. But again, full credit to Ringo because they'd done The Killer. And you'd done all these gunplay movies. It's like, what else were you going to do with the standard running, jumping, double guns firing? This, you really, So that's what you were talking about, the squib in the back of the head. Maybe I was confusing it. That was the shot I remembered. That was actually tricky when they shoots the gun out of the hand. That'd be squib on the gun. And then a wire pull to take the gun out from the hand?
Probably, yes.
Yeah. So we got kind of clear the club, and these guys get to throw down. Very tricky. Some places like Malaysia are very difficult even to have prop guns. Here in Hong Kong we do have companies that rent prop weapons and we're allowed to use them in films, but there are territories where it's really difficult. Even for prop guns it's very difficult. In Ireland, no way, no how, because even prop guns, apparently people will get hold of them and convert them to be used for real purposes. So we couldn't, I remember we were shooting in Ireland, we couldn't use it. We wanted a scene where we were going to have some firearms and it was just, you couldn't do it. You had to do something else. So it's kind of like China. You have your 3-minute rule. You fire a gun. If this is a Chinese co-production, by now the place would have to be swarming with cops, because whenever that's something they had to change it in Silverhawk at the beginning of Silverhawk. Originally, one of the bad guys was meant to fire a gun. And they said no, you can't, because the police would have to be there in 3 minutes. So they changed it to make it all empty hands. This is like kind of love on the battlefield.
So much going on every time we have a close-up with her. She's very emotional. There's so much going on.
Totally.
Great job.
Really, really good actress. And for some reason, Ringo was the only person who ever saw her and said, here's somebody who can do it. Look at him not blinking. So many actors you see. He's done so many gunplay films by this point, Chow. He's been through all the, the Proud and Confident films, the Better Tomorrow series. And so he's so used to the sound of gunfire, even though he himself doesn't like it. And so he said John Woo loves it. John Woo will kind of sit there happily listening, like he's listening to music, listening to all the gunfire going off. And Chow himself is such a peaceful, kind of like a family man, a home-loving kind of guy. He doesn't like the gunplay, but he acts perfectly well. But no end. How do you get around doing that when you're doing a gunplay scene and you feel like you should blink?
It's a conscious decision. One of the first times I ever used guns in a movie, the armourer, the gun guy said to me, "Try not to blink," and then, so it's a conscious decision. A lot of times when you do gunplay scenes like this, they make everybody wear earplugs. Personally, I don't like it because I want to. It's more real if you hear it. It's more real to the scene than if it's muted.
And I think it's like nothing looks worse than when you have somebody firing a gun and they're blinking away like crazy. And even if they're meant to be blinking because they're scared of guns, it still looks bad. So
it's not too heroic.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier we're here in the Caesar karaoke nightclub, and you also see it as a location in Jackie Chan's Crime Story, and it's still there. If you go on a Hong Kong, if you your Hong Kong walking tour, you want to see where they shot the films. This place is still very visible.
Did they use that in Double Impact? There was the bar scene where he acted as a waiter. He came in.
No, that was actually all a studio interior because they were going to blow it up. So they actually had interior, and they did quite a bit in here as well. But that particular time, they shot pretty much everything on a stage. The big bugbear with the British censors has always been violence against women. So a lot of the stuff, anything involving women, was kind of cut, and this shot was cut, with the blood coming out from her head. It's pretty extreme, even by today's standards.
I don't remember a lot of this stuff being in, like the squib in the back of the head and that shot of her being in the original movie I saw. I don't remember it being there.
Do you know it's strange the way films change in your mind over the years? Because I've had that happen no end of times. Films got on DVD. It wasn't like that before. Then you go back and check, and it's just stuff that you didn't register the first time round. If you saw the Hong Kong English one, definitely. But actually, there would have been cuts made. There were cuts made for theatrical print as well. So if you saw it in a theatre here, you're right. There would have been scenes missing. But I've actually sometimes seen stuff. I can't believe that was there the first time. Or you thought it was more. There was more the first time round. You go back and check, and no, it's it's the same picture. It's just I think our memory of films changes as we do. I have to say this movie actually looks better all the time, because the Hong Kong cinema, unfortunately, the last year or so has not been producing movies of this caliber. So when we go back to re-examine it, it's great it's coming out on DVD because it serves two functions. I mean, it really shows people the standard to which Hong Kong cinema can aspire, and I think should encourage local filmmakers to go, this is what we're capable of. And so it's great bringing it out on DVD, because these DVDs actually turn up in Hong Kong as well, and people locally can get to see them beautifully restored print with the extras, including our deathless comments.
It's a lot of Asian movies nowadays. The rights are being bought by American companies, and they're being remade. I'm surprised this one has never been picked up
for remake. It's funny, we got a strange track record. Many films are picked up films have been picked up for remake. None of them have been remade. Korean films, Japanese films have a much even going back to the days of Seven Samurai and even Fistful of Dollars and those movies being remade in the West. You've had that tradition. For some reason, Hong Kong movies are acquired and never remade. By the way, just talking about imagery, you notice what he's wearing on his tank top. He's got like a cross, like Christian cross. So again, I suppose if you're reading stuff into it, there's this juxtaposition throughout of religious imagery, or like kind of inappropriate, like the peace badge on Bonnie Foo's necklace. So you got that all going on there. It's interesting the way Simon Yam's character has kind of seduced every member of the group into kind of following along with him, and that's the many different skills. This is what people in movies always have skills that few people have in real life. I mean, would you know how to take a bullet out of somebody?
And it's always with a knife or pliers.
No. And then the person concerned never doesn't bleed to death. Notice also the Buddha on the mantelpiece there. So this is actually very little studio work here, as I mentioned earlier. It's basically they've gone out and found locations, both when they were in Thailand and now that they're here. And one thing I like about this, the female character actually is stuck between the two guys. And that's a classical position in Hong Kong cinema, and maybe in action cinema in general. But she actually makes an arbitrary choice. She ain't going to take this shit, and she's going to go off and have her own life, which I think is really different and interesting, and speaks well of Ringo as a filmmaker, that he actually gives her that. And she says her goodbye to Anthony, who's taking care of her, during the time that she believed Chow Yun-fat's character to be dead. He's chasing her down now, and they have their moment, but she still walks away.
Yeah, she doesn't run into his arms. She's a very independent character.
I think her playing of this scene was really just absolutely right, pitch perfect. And how much of that is Ringo coaching her, and how much is her really showing her true caliber as an actress? I don't know. But I think it's a real shame that, you know, in the wake of this, because this film failed in Hong Kong as a commercial success, and the tendency is when you're connected to a failure, you don't get offers, and if you're with a success, you do. You know, it's probably the same in Hollywood, right? So I think this kind of tainted her career. Whereas to me, I look at it now and I think, my God, she should have had like 3 or 4 other decent roles after this. But in real terms, she just kind of had a couple of like really supporting roles in, you know, lighter films. And 1993, that was it. Did a last picture.
Maybe it was a personal
Married and
choice.
retired.
She
Well,
didn't
the other
want
thing, maybe she'd had enough. She married and retired. I also think that after you've been offered, you know, nothing, you did this film, and you go back onto the treadmill, and you're offered just stupid bimbo roles. Having worked at this caliber, I can easily see somebody making the decision. You know what? If I'm not going to work with Ringo Lam, if I'm not going to work with Chow Yun-fat, then I'm going to just, you know, retire. That's another great shot, and the guitar beautifully echoing the emotion of the scene. Great combination of the performance, the movement of the camera, and the music. I hope you're taking notes, Gary. Director to be Gary Daniels, director in the making, ladies and gentlemen. You know, this is masterclass action directing 101. And your first picture should be in the Philippines, so I mean, it's not too far from Thailand. You've never been to Thailand, have you?
No.
To my surprise.
No,
but
mine
your
too.
Sifu's there now, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's in Koh Samui.
All right. So this, of course, I think, you know, arguably the real love story in the film. There's the girl loves. There's 3 love stories. There's the one between Simon and Anthony Wong, that kind of the Bond of brothers. The kind of the sick, twisted S&M love story between Simon Yam and Chow Yun-fat, and Chow Yun-fat actually being in love with Anne Bridgewater's character.
And,
so you call that.
And virgins.
Yes, I suppose. Yeah,
With
you
their
could throw
own
that
vagina.
virgin with their own vagina. Yeah, I think you can say, you know, this movie with all this stuff, and then we can use that kind of terminology. Look at that. Look at the apartment of Simon is really like pimp heaven.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Silk
just
and colours.
so. Well, you know, actually, I remember when I stayed at your place in LA.
Don't.
That was. That's what you said. That's what you said that day as well. Don't go there. And no, I'm just kidding. Gary's place is much funkier than that. Much flashier than this even. But they and it's in juxtaposition between the kind of the very Spartan place that Chow Yun-fat's rented for the duration of his, you know, revenge, and the kind of like the pleasure dome that is inhabited by Simon Yam's character Judge. And this, I wonder what happened to the dog after the movie was over. You know, did the dog get to go back to Thailand, or was it kind of it became dog stew in Guangdong?
Chow's giving more personal attention to the dog than he is to Simon Yam. So
Yeah, that's absolutely
Not
right.
Simon
So
Yam,
then
what I
maybe
keep
that's
saying,
another
Anthony
Wong. Yeah, that's another love story. Oh, I was thinking Anthony. This is maybe the other love story in the movie is like Chow and the dog. You know, yeah, that's cute. You know, that's a good picture dog. And yeah, that's real. If you know Bruce Yu, as I know Bruce Yu from working with him on these movies, you see that that kind of shirt. That's just like kind of that's Bruce. Bruce would wear that on a night off, and bring it in on the Monday and say, Simon, I got a great shirt for you. But I think, you know, Simon Yam is one of these guys. He's like a Michael Caine. You know, he's been in, and Anthony Wong the same. They've been in so many bad movies, but on their day, there's like no one better. And I think Simon Yam really came in and attacked this role full bore. You know, and he's not winking at the camera. He's playing it straight. He's playing gay and straight. He's playing gay, but he's playing it straight. And so it works. He did this other movie, the one I mentioned, Looking for Mr. Perfect. And in that whole film, everybody seems to be winking at, including Ringo, is winking at the camera and going, we know this is stupid, but we're along for the ride. By the way, on a personal note, I have to mention, it's a shot from this scene of Chow on the motorbike that graces the cover of the first edition of Hong Kong Action Cinema, my book on the movies. And I'm now working on a remix. I just hope my publishers in England will get their butts in gear and we get a deal together and bring the book, because everybody's asking me, like, it's 10 years on to do the 10-year remix of Hong Kong Action Cinema. So if they're listening to this commentary, get to it, lads. Just seeing this reminded me, because that was the shot we ended up with, because we couldn't get clearances for a Bruce Lee image or Jackie Chan one, so we actually got a clearance to use the shot of Chow. So Chow became the main guy.
It's a great representation
That
of
was
Hong
the
Kong
shot.
movies.
Yeah, it is, totally. You got the bike, the Don. That's his nickname, the Don. At least in England it was. And actually it was my old brother-in-arms, Rick Baker, came up with the term used to define this kind of film, heroic bloodshed. And it's been used quite a bit since then. Heroic Bloodshed really is like the films that take all of the themes and ideas of the old Jiang Hu, or the old swordplay movies, and can transfer them onto gangster films. Fire stunts for the movie provided by the Man Lung Company, which is a Hong Kong-based pyrotechnic company, and they did a bang-up job. I think the pyrotechnics in this film really rock.
Yeah.
We had a couple of big blow-ups in the film itself. Should also mention Wellington Fung, Fung Sir. That's on the...
It'll be on a trailer there, so you don't see the ground with the wheels of Chow.
Right. Yeah, this is the trailer shot. It's a shot you're going to use in the trailer, and he's on a trailer at the same time. So in two ways, it's a trailer shot. But this whole ending is just fantastically put together. Great combination of the abilities of Ringo, the DP, and the action director. And the end of Dino, or Dino, depending how you want to pronounce his subtitle name. Very cold blood. This is like, very cold-blooded, the whole film. I mean, there's no holding
similar
back.
to the way his wife got it in the movie.
So it's kind of and it's kind of juxtaposition of the fact that, the way that Simon's character behaves and the way that Chow Yun-fat's character behaves. Look at that. He's even got like the kind of the snakeskin case matching the jacket. That's just so cool.
Chow's supposed to be the hero with the right attitude and the right mindset, but he's blowing people away.
Left, right, and center.
The same as
totally.
Simon Yam.
So there, boom. And again, that ridiculously accurate shooting. Show me the Olympic. That's the end of Year of the Dragon shot when he has the hole in his hand. But you show me the Olympic marksman that can, at that range, can shoot a handgun out of somebody's hand. But hey, it's only a movie.
Cinematic license.
Totally. The fantastically lit. I mean, you look at this, the foreground, the way they've lit the characters' faces, and then the background, you've got that kind of bluish tint to the smoke.
Blue is the most popular for night shooting.
Why is that?
See in most movies.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly, but
this, by the way, you talk about cop. Remember the end of The Punisher? Did you see The Punisher?
The new version?
Yeah, with Thomas Jane, and this was The Punisher. The end of The Punisher all over. This whole thing with cars. And actually, in some prints of the movie, when he says fuck, his lips say fuck, but the soundtrack says shit. Because you're not meant to say fuck.
It's amazing when you go on a looping session and you have to do the loop the TV version.
Right.
And you've got to come up with a word that can sync with your lips, but is not the cuss word. We come up with some amazing stuff.
Sure. It's like, there's this kind of... This, to me, is like the real ending of the movie is Chow dies, they kill each other, and it's like kind of that's the ending. It's like almost what the ending of Last Samurai should have been, that Tom Cruise should have died, but they couldn't have that, so he lives to fight another day.
It reminds me of Fist of Fury. Bruce Lee's character, even though he was the hero, had to die because he killed so many people.
Well, that's it.
It's the same with Chow.
Oh, well, actually, in many territories in Asia, Malaysia, Singapore particularly, if you break the law at the end, you have to go to jail or you have to be killed. You can't get away with it. And so a lot of Hong Kong movies used to have this final use of the gun. You get the knife POV shot. Great finale. Again, heavily cut in many territories, including England. I saw the positioning of Chow's wound made this kind of unrealistic.
Right in the heart.
Right, The guy has a lot of heart. He took a clip through it and he's fine. And we haven't shown him putting on a bulletproof vest. But this has the feel to me of a film that was ending one way. Great final shot. Boom. You just follow the Blood Express. And that's the end of our really memorable villain. And I mean, if this isn't this movie, bullet in the head, this is Simon Yam really at the top of his game. Now this felt to me like the end, when it's like Carlito's Way, he's there. What is the moment? What is the thing in his mind as he's dying? He thinks about the woman, the friends he's not lost, the woman he's lost. What meant the most to him. He doesn't have any kids. I was actually waiting for a shot of the dog to come up, but it didn't. And so this is like, he's dying. And I think they previewed it, showed it to people, and everybody said, geez, that ain't going to work because this film's a downer anyway. And you're going to kill Chow Yun-fat, the most beloved character. I mean, he's died in films before, but they didn't think it didn't work. This is, credits should roll here, but there's like this kind of, but really, he's going to live happily ever after. One thing I should mention, in the whole of all the violence in Hong Kong, the police have not shown up even one time. And I just want to, any tourist, and if you look actually here, to me, his hair looks slightly different. So this really does look like a pickup shot.
It's almost redemption for his character. The money has to get to the girl
Yeah.
who was injured at the
I guess.
in the blowout. So it's
I guess.
I would maybe it's about redemption.
But Anthony Wong could have come and got the money. So, but anyway, I agree. That's what it probably means in this version. But my feeling was it was kind of
Sure.
a tag on. So here we have Alan Tam singing his heart out on the soundtrack as we reach the end of Slam Bang. This is really the best of the best from this great golden era of Hong Kong action cinema. Full Contact. Thank you for coming in with me today, Gary, and giving us like a kind of we're on opposite sides, because I've made films, but I'm also known as being an expert, and you're a guy who's like kind of made films and by making them become an expert too. So it's great to have your perspective on the film.
I thought I knew about Hong Kong movies before I heard you.
Oh, you're too kind.
You and Tarantino put me to shame.
We had a good time, didn't we, that evening?
I thought I knew about Hong Kong movies.
Our evening with Quentin. It was such a blast. But, this is a great picture. Did this inspire you to be a director?
I can't say this movie did, no. But to me, I love Hong Kong martial arts movies. But outside of martial arts movies, this has to be one of my favorite Hong Kong movies.
Mine too. So thank you, and goodbye.